This is a film about Sorrento that will hopefully serve as a guide and impart a bit of information about the place. Sorrento has its origins in ancient times, and during the Roman period it was known as Sorrentum. It got its name from the Sirens of Greek mythology. On the other side of the Sorrentine Peninsula, you can actually see the islands of the Sirens. Legend states that the songs they sung were so enchanting that they caused crews to sail their ships too close to the islands and end up being shipwrecked. There's a famous account in Homer's Odyssey in which Odysseus, on his way back from the Trojan War, following the advice of the enchantress Circe, got his crew to seal their ears with wax, while at the same time getting them to tie him to the ship's mast so that he could listen to their songs in safety. Today, Sorrento sings a different siren song, a song that attracts tourists in large numbers. This film shows some of the things that you can see in Sorrento. It organises them around three areas. These are the area around the main piazza, Tasso Square, the main street, Corso Italia, and the piazza that is named after Sorrento's patron saint, St Antonino's Square. These will now be covered in turn. Tasso Square is Sorrento's main central piazza. It's named after the poet, Torquato Tasso. The square is a good place to get orientated before exploring the rest of Sorrento. There are many bars, shops and restaurants on the square, and it's a great place for people watching. On the eastern side of the square is a statue of Sorrento's patron saint, St Antonino. St Antonino Abate was born around 555 AD in Campania, near Salerno. He was a monk at the monastery of Monte Cassino until it was attacked by the Lombards. He later settled in Sorrento and for a time served as its bishop. Amongst other things, he is credited with saving Sorrento from invasion by the Moors. A famous miracle that he performed was to save a child who had been swallowed up by a whale. The whale is depicted on the statue, resting subdued under his left foot. His feast day is celebrated on the same day as that of St Valantine, 14th of February. As part of the celebrations, a silver statue of the saint is carried in religious procession along the streets. After he died around 625 AD, he is said to have been buried within the city walls to make it invulnerable to attack. The exact location is marked today by the Basilica of St Antonino. This is located in St Antonino Square, a short distance away from the main Tasso Square. If you look to your right as you enter Tasso Square from the west on the Corso Italia, you see a statue of the man after whom the square is named. Torquato Tasso was a 16th century Italian poet whose most famous work is Gerusalemme Libertata, or Jerusalem Delivered. This work, completed in 1581, depicts the events around the siege of Jerusalem during the First Crusade. Tasso was born in Sorrento on the 11th of March 1544 and died in Rome on the 25th of April 1595. Like some other men of artistic genius, he was a tortured soul, and it is thought he suffered from bipolarity. The statue itself was created by the Neapolitan sculptor and painter Gennaro Calli in 1870. If you go just behind and to the right of Tasso's statue, you come to the Via Santa Maria della Pieta. This is one of Sorrento's medieval streets, and the area contains some of its oldest buildings. This was a main thoroughfare long before the creation of today's Corso Italia. This is an interesting side street that leads to a restaurant. The stone arches up above add to the medieval feel of the setting. Back on the main alleyway, you'll see places set out for alfresco dining. The street actually connects Tasso Square to the cathedral that is dedicated to Saints Philip and James. And the arch up ahead takes you under the cathedral's bell tower. Halfway through on your right, you can see people walking past the bell tower on the Corso Italia, which runs parallel to this street. You can see people entering the Corso Italia from the interesting back streets of the old town. If you continue walking under the bell tower, you finally emerge in the vicinity of the cathedral itself. We now return to Tasso Square to look at the church of Anuntuario della Maddona del Carmine. It's a yellow pastel-coloured building near the statue of St Antonino and his whale. The church is believed to mark the general area where a group of Sorrentine Christians were martyred during the Roman period under the anti-Christian laws of the Emperor Diocletion. It was originally the site of a pagan temple, but this was replaced by a Christian church in the 3rd century AD. The current church was built in the Baroque style in 1572 and dedicated to Our Lady of Mount Carmel. Here's the church from just inside the door. The ceiling of the church is quite spectacular, with a painting by Onofrio Avellino called Maddona in Glory with Saints and Angels. Back out on the piazza, we now visit an important, though less culturally inspiring location, the main taxi rank. This is obviously a useful spot to be aware of when you are travelling around the Sorrento area. If you walk a short distance beyond the taxi rank, you come to a site from Sorrento's industrial past, the Valley of the Mills. These are the remains of flour mills that date back to the 13th century. They are built in a crevice that opened up due to seismic activity around 35,000 years ago. The mills were attracted to the location by the flowing water at the bottom of this crevice. The area fell into disuse in the 1940s after flour production moved elsewhere. It then started to revert back to nature. To get to our next point of interest, we take the road that runs in front of the yellow-coloured church of Anuntuario della Maddona del Carmine up ahead. We go in the direction of the sign, pointing towards San Agnello. Our destination is the Hotel Laureli et Londre, which on my previous visits to Sorrento stood derelict, as shown here. This is one of my favourite spots in Sorrento, and it enjoys tremendous views of the Bay of Naples. I always thought that it would be great if it could be brought back into use. I'm now glad to report that this has indeed happened, so on my last visit to Sorrento I went to witness the result. We'll see the result at the end of our current walk. On our way, we pass the garden and fountain area on our right. We follow the road, keeping to the left. As we go round the corner, we get our first glimpse of the hotel. As you can see, it looks much sharper than it did before. This hotel has always put me in mind of the old world charm and the romance of the Grand Tour. The site has a long history, and the current hotel's website mentions that it is built on the remains of Roman structures that are still visible today. We now return to Tasso Square to look at the final point of interest we will cover around the area of the square. To get to Sorrento's railway station from Tasso Square, you go to the eastern side of the square and follow the Corsa Italia. As you leave the square, you pass the yellow-coloured church of Anuntuario della Maddona del Carmine on your left. You continue up Corso Italia and take the second street on the right, which is called Via Ernesto de Curtis. This is opposite Piazza Angelino Lauro, which you can see up ahead on the left. You can see the station building at the end of the street. Sorrento Station is the terminus at the end of this branch of the Circumvesuviana Railway, so you can't miss your stop on the way back. It's from here that you can get trains to Castelmare di Stabia, Pompeii and Naples. The excavations at Pompeii are just over the road from the station there. To get to the platforms, you have to go up the stairs. As the name implies, the Circumvesuviana network circles Mount Vesuvius. The train also stops at nearby Sant'Agnello. The station, as you would expect, has amenities such as a snack bar and a taxi rank. It is here where we conclude our exploration of the area around Tasso Square. Corso Italia is Sorrento's main street. It runs right through Tasso Square, but I think the most interesting part is at the western side of the square. The western side is the side that you can see now, up ahead. We're looking at it from this angle, so that you know its position in relation to Tasso Square. However, we're going to explore the street from the far end and work our way back to the square. Here we are at the far end, right next to Sorrento's hospital. The first place we come to is the Piazza Andrea Veniero. This square often contains market stalls where you can buy souvenirs. There's a route down to the beach at Marina Grande that you can take from this square. The route to Marina Grande involves turning left at the beginning of the square and then turning left again at the back of the square. On the left we walk past the Church of Annunciation, which is thought to be built on the site of an ancient temple to the goddess Sibyl. The journey to the beach involves navigating some of Sorrento's ancient narrow back streets. Partway down, you come to a viewing platform where you can get your first proper glimpse of the fishing village of Marina Grande. We enter Marina Grande through the Greek Gate, which was built in the 4th century BC after this part of Italy had been colonised by the ancient Greeks. We are greeted by a view of the Bay of Naples and Mount Vesuvius. Here's a view of Marina Grande as you go down the steps to the harbour area. There's an attractive collection of pastel coloured buildings around the harbour, and you can see hotels built into the cliffs up above. There are places where you can hire boats and book trips at Marina Grande. Here you can see one boat on its way out. As you can see, there are quite a few small pleasure boats moored in the harbour. Some of them are quite colourful. Here you can see fishermen mending their nets. You can also see boats from the fishing fleet together with some of their fishing equipment. Going hand in hand with the catching of fish are the local selection of fish restaurants. The distance between sea and table is a short one, and this should ensure a good selection of very fresh seafood. As you can see, there are quite a range of places where you can eat. This one that I went to is called Taverna Azzurra, and like most of them, is right next to the beach. Here is some of the food that we had while eating there. We'll now take a look at the small beach. There are plenty of places where you can rent sunbeds and parasols. If you get on the front there, you can sit while the water laps up against your feet. It's also a nice place for bathing, though it can be a bit pebbly in places. You can be joined at the waterside by the local bird life. As you can see from the flag fluttering in the breeze above the beach, this is a blue flag beach. If you look down the coast from Marina Grande, you can see how Sorrento is built above quite tall cliffs. This, of course, enhances the views that you have when looking out to sea from Sorrento itself. I'll conclude this section of film with the view of Vesuvius and the Bay of Naples from Marina Grande. We now continue our journey down Sorrento's main street, Corso Italia. The next place we're going to look at is on the left. You can see its distinctive green awning up ahead. This is Chaplin's Irish Bar. I include this in the film because it's close to where I usually stay and therefore serves as my local pub while I'm in Sorrento. As you can see here, the staff are very warm and friendly. Here, Mario has a joke with my dad about his lack of understanding of the Italian language.
Come stai? Come stai? Bene, grazie. 5 years in Italy, you don't speak any Italian words.
Some people come here to watch sporting events, and there are numerous TV screens distributed throughout the bar. According to this flag, it also serves as the Sorrento Celtic Supporters Club. Since it's run by Italians, I refer to it as the Irish bar with an Italian twist. It's therefore quite a unique place, and it attracts people from around the world, in addition to Ireland, and can have quite a cosmopolitan vibe. It can sometimes get quite noisy, with a lot of singing along, and sometimes people also opt to dance. It can get quite busy, and the staff will try to get people seats, so don't be surprised if you make new friends. We now move on from Chaplin's and continue walking on Corso Italia towards Tasso Square. Further up the street on the right, we come to a restaurant called Ristorante Parrucchiano Favorita. People might not know that Sorrento was actually the site of a culinary innovation. It was in this restaurant that cannelloni was invented over a century ago, and at that time was called strascinata. Up the stairs you can dine in a rather magnificent Mediterranean garden. Before we get to the cathedral and bell tower, we reach a street on the right called Via Antonino Cesale, which leads to the city walls. The street begins at this archway. You can see the wall at the arch up ahead. Next to the wall on the right, you can see some metal gates. The stairs behind them lead to the Pisano bastion and part of the wall. The sign on the gates gives the opening times when people can come and visit this feature of Sorrento. The archaeological evidence suggests that Sorrento had walls as long ago as the 4th century BC. However, the current walls date back to the 16th century. They were built during the period of Spanish rule to defend against Saracen pirates who raided various parts of the Italian peninsula. Near the middle of this stretch of wall, behind a gate, you can see some old steps that go up to the top of the wall. Looking back up towards the wall, you can see how houses were subsequently built into it in more recent times. We now return to the Corso Italia to continue our route towards Tasso Square. The red and yellow coloured tower up ahead is an important Sorrento landmark. This is the bell tower of Sorrento Cathedral. We see the cathedral on our right, just before you reach the tower. Here's the tower from a different angle. The columns beside the tower's archway date back to ancient times. The archway under the bell tower links Corso Italia to Via Santa Maria della Pieta. The space beneath the tower was used as a meeting place during the Middle Ages. The lower part of the tower structure dates back to the 11th century and the upper to the 15th. If you look back across Corso Italia from under the bell tower, you are looking straight down a street called Lago Padre Reginaldo Giuliani. This is one of the streets leading off Corso Italia into the historic centre or Old Town of Sorrento. To many, this part of town is known affectionately as the Drains, though others don't like this term. The next bit of footage starts at the opposite end of this street. Here we are at the bottom of the hill, heading in the direction of the cathedral. In this area there are quite a few restaurants, with waiters trying to persuade you into their particular establishment. There are plenty of shops in the old town, where you can buy souvenirs for friends and relatives back home. One thing there is certainly a lot of in Sorrento is limoncello. There are of course the usual shops selling Sorrento calendars to remind you of your holiday, and Sorrento postcards to send to people at home. There are lots of nooks and crannies in the medieval streets of the maze-like old town. In some ways, the old town of Sorrento puts me in mind of the souks of North Africa and the Middle East, or of the bazaars of the Arabian Nights. There's a noteworthy shop down one of the alleyways of the old town. That is the Christmas shop. You might be on your summer holidays, but in here you can buy Christmas decorations to remind you of Sorrento in the midst of winter. You can get some interesting decorations that you certainly would not be able to obtain in the shops back home. Some of these are specific to Sorrento, such as those shaped like lemons, or those with Sorrentine landscapes painted on them. They are all sold with Christmas music playing on merrily in the background. We now head back out of the rabbit warren of the old town to Corso Italia. As we re-enter Corso Italia, I would like to say a few words about the Italian custom of la passeggiata. In Italy, as the sun begins to go down, people engage in a social event known as la passeggiata. This is when Italians dress up and embark on a slow promenade in a town's main street or central piazza. You will often see this tradition on the Corso Italia, with smartly dressed groups slowly walking and talking. It is a time to see and be seen. However, in Sorrento, it may be difficult to distinguish between this and the many wedding groups that also walk through Sorrento's streets. Up ahead, on the far side of Tasso Square, we can see the yellow-coloured church of Anuntuario della Maddona del Carmine. This concludes our exploration of Corso Italia at the western end of Tasso Square. A short walk from the main Tasso Square is Piazza St Antonino, St Antonino Square. To get there, we head down the road to the right of Bar Ercolano, the one with the palm trees. If you look to your right as you enter the square, you see the Basilica of St Antonino. This contains the remains of Sorrento's patron saint and was built in the 11th century. There are two whale bones at the entrance that are supposed to be the actual bones of the whale from which the saint famously rescued a child. We turn now and look up at the square itself. It's dominated by the Conservatorio di Santa Maria della Grazia. It was built around 1556 in accordance with the will of the Sorrentine noblewoman Bernardina D'Onorso. At the centre of the square there's a delightful garden. In the garden, as is befitting for a square named after Sorrento's patron saint, there is a statue of St Antonino Abate. Another statue of the saint is situated in Tasso Square. We now move off the square down this street. Our next stop is on the right near the blue and white signs. A bit off the beaten track and therefore easy to miss is Foreigners Club. This is also the site of the Tourist Information Office. The desk is just inside the entrance to the right. There are also some free public toilets in this building. To get to Foreigners Club itself, once inside this building you veer off to the left, walking past the bar and onto the terrace. I understand that the place got its name because it was the site of a bar set up by Allied soldiers during World War II. The restaurant provides magnificent views of Vesuvius and the Bay of Naples. Even though there's quite a broad menu, I tend to have a pizza when I come here because I think they're the best in town. When you come out of Foreigners Club, turn left. Then turn right when you reach St Antonino Square. This leads to quite a few places of interest, including the cloisters of San Francesco, the Villa Comunale Park and its viewing platform, the beach of San Francesco, and Marina Piccola. First we go under the arch near the railings. This leads to the cloister of San Francesco, which formed part of a monastery. This dates back to the 14th century. The courtyard is enclosed by a portico formed by Gothic arches. This is a popular occasion for holding weddings, and you'll frequently see a wedding party congregating outside as they wait for a ceremony to take place. Outside you may also see wedding photos being taken that use the Bay of Naples as an unforgettable backdrop. We now enter the picturesque Villa Comunale Park, which contains a rather beautiful garden. The viewing platform provides magnificent views of Mount Vesuvius and the Bay of Naples. It's particularly atmospheric near dusk when the sun is beginning to set. The view gives you a good impression of the geography of the Bay of Naples. Since the view incorporates Vesuvius, your mind naturally goes back to what you would have seen from this spot back in AD 79, when the eruptions that caused the destruction of Pompeii and Herculaneum were taking place. Over there, on the other side of the bay, was the Roman naval base of Misenum. It was there where Pliny the Elder was stationed as commander of the Roman fleet. It was the testimony of Pliny's young nephew who gave us the details of the actual eruption. Pliny famously raced across the bay to save a friend trapped at the end of the Sorrentine peninsula at Stabiae. This was close to the current Castellamare di Stabia, which is located over there beyond the cliffs. It was near here, at Castellamare di Stabia, where Pliny became yet another victim of that famous volcanic eruption. The viewing platform at Villa Comunale also allows you to take a look at the beach area of San Francesco from above. The clear blue water looks very inviting from up here, especially on a hot day. There are plenty of places down there where you can hire deck chairs, sunbeds and parasols at the various lidos. You can also see a bit of the main port of Marina Piccola from the viewing platform. It's from there that you can buy tickets for trips further afield to places like Capri, Positano and Amalfi. From up here, it's sometimes quite pleasant to just watch the various boats coming and going from the port as you while away the day. At the edge of the viewing platform, you can buy tickets for the lift to get down to sea level. You buy them from the booth, and you'll need them at the turnstiles at the bottom to get out. Turn right to walk towards the port of Marina Piccola. As you walk, you'll see the beach areas and lidos that we were previously viewing from above only moments ago. If you walk a little bit further, you'll reach Marina Piccola, which has its share of restaurants, bars and shops, as well as an area to get your boat tickets. If you got a return ticket, to get back into Sorrento, simply retrace your steps and get the lift back up to the viewing platform. That concludes our exploration of the area around St Antonino Square.